Before all time, there was the noon, a sea of chaos, where all forms of what was to be lay hidden. Within the heart of the living noon stirred the spirit of the waters, the great snake, Apep. From the coils of Apep sprang Atum, the first god of creation, and the one became two. Apep embraced Atum in his coils, binding tightly to his second nature, trying to become one with himself again. But Atum transformed himself in the folds of Apep into the scarab god of becoming and broke free of his embrace. Apep, the serpent of chaos, fought to return with Atum to the heart of the noon. But Atum overpowered Apep. Lying now alone in the waters, Atum thought of his children to be. In his heart he created their names and spoke them. Shu, the air, Tefnut, the moisture, and they were given form. Shu and Tefnut embraced their father Atum, then left him to explore the limits of the noon. Alone once more in the dark waters of the noon, in his mind's eye, Atum watched the children lose strength as they ventured too far. Atum took the divine power of his eye and sent it to light their way home. grew in its place, and in this new eye, Atum saw the return of his children. When the first eye returned, she was in fury at the one who had taken her place and tried to destroy it. But Atum placed her on his brow as his royal protector. In his heart, Atum created the first dry land, the mound, and with his children, Shu and Tefnut, brought it into being. From the mound, Atum spoke the name of his soul bird, Bennu, the phoenix. Bennu landed on the first dry land and laid his egg. Which was the lotus bud of the dawn of creation. From the heart of the lotus were born the many forms of the sun god, the divine light. Atum joined with the light of his creation, and Ra came into being. The light of Ra dispelled the darkness of the noon. On the mound, Shu and Tefnut gave rise to Geb, the earth, and Nut, the starry night sky. Nut swallowed Ra, who came between her and the embrace of her brother Earth. Together Geb and Nut conceived 5 children, but they could not be born till Shu, the air, raised his daughter the night sky from the earth so that the star children could break free. The star children were Osiris, god of the corn and of renewal, and his sisters Isis and Nephthys, and their jealous brother Set. Osiris was beloved of his sisters, but Set claimed Nephthys for his own. Osiris and Isis were lovers. Osiris lay as the earth, full of seeds. And Isis nourished the seeds. From the divine corn sprang the first seeds of creation which landed in the black earth. and the land of Egypt came into being. Isis drew down the waters of the heavenly Nile to give life to the land of Egypt. The waters rose, and Osiris called forth the first garden. Osiris and Isis were lord and queen of this divine garden, and their sister Nephthys came to be with them there. But Set was jealous of the creative powers of Osiris and of the love Nephthys bore him. He blasted the garden with a raging sandstorm, turning the good black earth into desert. Set wanted also to destroy his brother Osiris, and they fought. When Osiris rested in his form of Lord of the Corn, Set cut him to pieces. And scattered the pieces to the four corners of Egypt. One piece of Osiris fell in the waters of the Nile and was swallowed by a fish. But the rest were gathered up by Isis and Nephthys, who sprinkled the dismembered body of their brother with the water of life. Isis invoked the jackal-headed god Anubis, lord of embalming, to come and restore the form of Osiris. Anubis tightly bound the flesh of Osiris and created the first mummy. Which was covered by the first coffin. Isis sent her sister and Anubis away, so that she could be alone with Osiris. She transformed herself into a kite, and with her wings fanned life into Osiris, and through her magic restored to him for one night only the vitality of his manhood. They embraced once more, and their son Horus was conceived. Set learned of the conception of this son and came to disrupt the union. But Isis escaped. She flew to the hidden waters of the delta to keep her unborn child safe from the destructive powers of Set. And Horus was born. As he grew, Isis told.
In the beginning, there was just a vast emptiness known as Ginnungagap, which separated the kingdom of fire of Muspelheim from Niflheim, the icy land of mist. The icy mist of Niflheim continued to fill the void of Ginnungagap and formed a large ice block. When the temperature in Muspelheim began to increase, the heat emanated from the kingdom of fire started to melt the great icy stone. Inside of the ice, Ymir began to emerge, a primitive divinity who was hibernating inside the ice. Already defrosted, Ymir continued to sleep, but the heat of Muspelheim made the colossal creature sweat, and the first living beings sprouted from this perspiration. Ymir was not the only one who emerged from the ice melting. A large cow named Aldombla also emerged, and from its tits flowed 4 rivers that fed Ymir. The cow fed itself by licking a block of salty ice, and from the eaten ice a new creature emerged. This was Buri, the progenitor of the gods, giving rise to Jotnar. Buri coupled with the giantess, and they both generated Bor, who in turn, with the giantess Bestla, brought to Odin, Vili, and Ve to the world. Odin and his brothers lived frustrated in the emptiness of Ginnungagap. The sky and the earth were not a reality yet, nor the sea and the forest. The brothers decided that something would have to be done, and only after Ymir's death, they were able to start the world as we know it. Odin, Vili, and Ve attacked and killed the giant Ymir. The oceans were born from the spilled blood. Firm land emerged from Ymir's flesh, and his large bones were piled up, giving rise to the chains of mountains. Ymir's flesh had small larvae, which originated dwarves who would live under the earth, and the noble elves who had their dwelling in Alfheim. After having shaped Midgard, the gods thought it could not remain an uninhabited kingdom, and, seeing two trunks on the edge of the ocean, decided that this material would create mankind. A man called Ask and a woman called Embla were molded. Odin gave them life, Villa intelligence, and Ve carved their eyes, ears, and mouth, and so the men could hear, see, and speak. All human beings are descendants of this first couple, and for having given life to the first couple, Odin is known as the father of all. Finally, the brothers created the kingdom of Asgard, which would become the dwelling of the gods. This kingdom was separated from the others, connected only by the Bifrost Bridge. And so the reign of the gods over the world began.
Odin likely represents more attributes and concepts than any other deity, being associated with war, death, royalty, wisdom, knowledge, sorcery, and poetry. At the beginning of time, there were two realms, one filled with cold mist, and the other with raging flames, and a primordial void between the two. Eventually, the two intermingling elements combined in the void, and formed the first Jotun, Ymir, also known as a giant. Along with Ymir, there was also a giant cow that he suckled on for nourishment, and from his sweat came more giants, the Jotnar. The cow, on the other hand, licked the salt from the nearby ice, and from this licking came the first Aesir god, known as Buri. He had a son, who in turn married a Jotun, who gave birth to 3 sons, one of whom was Odin. Odin and his brothers then slew Ymir, the primordial giant, and the great rushing of blood that flooded from his body drowned the great cow, as well as the rest of the Jotnar, except for 2. These 2 went on to repopulate the race of giants. Odin and his brothers then took the corpse of Ymir and used it to help create the earth, using his flesh to make the soil, his bones to make mountains, and his teeth to make boulders and stones. They used his skull to create the sky, and sparks from the realm of fire to make the sun, moon, and stars. They created a race of light elves and a world for them, as well as the dark elves deep under the earth. They made sprites, spirits, and animals to inhabit the earth, and then they needed something to worship them, so they created humans. They built a fence using Ymir's eyebrows around the earth to protect the humans from the Jotnar, and finally they created the realm of Asgard, high above the world so that they could watch over their creations. He also married Frigg, who is said to know the fate of all, but says nothing of it. Odin fathered a number of sons, although exactly how many is unknown. Among these, he is the father of Thor, god of thunder, and Balder, god of light. He also took note of a certain Jotun that was capable of taking any shape he wished, to a far greater extent than other giants, known as Loki. Odin liked Loki's wit and charm, and asked him to become a blood brother, to which Loki agreed. The two swore to be true brothers to one another, and Odin brought Loki into Asgard, where he was accepted by the others. Loki, however, developed a great reputation as a spiteful trickster, trusted by neither the gods nor the giants, but always managed to talk his way back into their good graces. In these days, Odin would often walk among the humans in the disguise of a wise old wanderer, testing the hospitality of those he visits. He also utilized 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, who traveled the world daily to provide him with information, giving him the name of Raven God. Odin was a relentless pursuer of wisdom and knowledge, and would sacrifice much in these pursuits. On one occasion, Odin went to the world tree, Yggdrasil, and hung himself from its branches for 9 days before finally learning the secrets of runic letters. These runes contained great power, and with their magic, he became the wisest and mightiest being in the cosmos. This, however, was not enough for Odin, and he craved more knowledge. From his throne, he spied upon the realm of the savage Jotnar, and noticed one that was very wise. This giant controlled a well of wisdom, where one of Yggdrasil's roots ended, and drank its waters every day to become ever wiser. Odin went to this Jotun, asking for a single drink from the well. The giant agreed, but only if Odin shared his all-seeing vision with him. Odin promptly plucked out one of his own eyes, placing it in the well before having a drink. From then on, he possessed only a single eye, but was truly the wisest of the wise. As life continued on Earth, and the gods continued to battle against the Jotnar, Odin's son Balder began to be troubled by ominous dreams that saw his life threatened. Due to the machinations of Loki, Balder was eventually killed, seemingly through an accident. Although none suspected Loki of playing a part in his death, his jealousy and spite eventually got the best of him, and he admitted openly to being responsible before fleeing. The gods demanded punishment of Loki from Odin, who used his all-seeing sight to locate him. The Aesir captured Loki and tortured him, bringing guilt to Odin for breaking his bond of kinship with Loki. This broken oath, among others in Asgard, led the gods to the events of Ragnarok, meaning doom of the gods, or twilight of the gods. Rather than being an apocalyptic end of days, Ragnarok instead foretold the end of a cycle of time, which would be followed by a rebirth, and eventually, another Ragnarok. For the Aesir gods, however, they knew their days were limited, Odin especially. Yggdrasil began to wilt, and brother turned against brother in this time of imminent destruction. Odin and the Aesir gathered as many strong and brave warriors as possible in the halls of Valhalla, and the Jotnar were growing ever bolder in their attacks. It was a hard time in the world of men, with death and depravity rampant, an age of axe and sword, with a deadly winter and the world waiting to fall into ruin. Finally, Ragnarok had come. The greatest battle that history could muster took place, and although Odin led a vast host of warriors into the war, he himself was swallowed up by the dread wolf Fenrir. In the end, the Aesir lost the battle, and the world was plunged into darkness as Yggdrasil broke and fell. And in time, a new day dawned, and the next cycle began, but people did not forget the deeds of the gods. Of course, there are a number of smaller tales related to Odin beyond just these. Stories of his relentless pursuit of wisdom, and his wanderings across the realms. These tales showcase Odin's imperfections and similarities to mortals, his willingness to trick or deceive others, and his legendary wisdom. Odin is the patron of many, from kings to outlaws, poets to berserkers, shamans to seers. Odin represents those who are willing to work and sacrifice to obtain that which they desire, and welcomed only the most worthy of warriors into his hall of Valhalla. The Norsemen were a hardy and capable people, and it is likely that their belief in figures such as Odin pushed them to continue to pursue strength and wisdom, much like the All-Father.
Apollo again, just like the moon missions. In ancient Rome, the laurel was not permitted for profane uses, and lighting it at the fires of the altar was strictly forbidden. And I knew from the treaty that the UN had strictly forbidden Antarctica from being explored and exploited. Was there a message in this? I started digging, and then I realised that not only did the United Nations have this logo, but also the International Maritime Organization, the International Civil Aviation Organization, and the World Health Organization. The Maritime Organization polices the seas, and the Aviation Organization polices the skies. The World Health Organization controls all health and disease communications and guidance for the world. Did the UN's military really police Antarctica with the maritime and aviation, or is it just an arbitrary treaty honouring the last unspoiled place on Earth?
Hey, it's a Navy destroyer. He will yield. He'll be thinking, that cheeky better not cross my bow. Stop, Josh. They take it seriously.
What did they say?
You got to yield. You can't just fucking. They think you're going to charge them.
We don't know for sure, but they did say something.
No, they did.
They come back last night. Yeah, fucking talk to them.
Actually going around. He's turning. Stop. He's turning. He is actually turning.
You said about the ship yesterday.
No, he is turning. Fucking hell, what have we done now? It's turning, Josh. Just sit still.
He slowed down, has he?
Yeah, he's really slowed down. No doubt we were in trouble. It's coming to us.
He's coming to us.
He's got the shits because
One six.
yeah.
Who the fuck's that?
We're heading to the shelf to go.
So we're out fishing, heading out fishing. No, we're just heading out fishing.
Gigs out, boys.
Going that way.
We're just traversing.
Set up a demo today with this Cessna and the Air National Guard. I'm going to be inside of this Cessna and we're going to be going rogue. We're going to fly into that no-fly zone and we're going to see how the Air National Guard does it. They scramble the fighter jets that come
Take off. We're on.
flying for miles and miles until
Okay, we've just entered the no-fly zone now.
our pilots aren't talking to air traffic control, ignoring their calls to reach them. That triggers an alarm at the Air National Guard base. These fighter pilots scrambling to their jets. They're on alert and ready to take action 24 hours a day. Today, racing to their F-16s, suiting up, climbing on board, and rushing to the runway. Taking off to intercept our rogue Cessna. Reaching the target in just minutes. This is the view from the F-16. That's my Cessna right there.
Intimidating as you would think it would be. Look at that fighter jet. He's right off our wing.
Another F-16 swooping in on the right, calling us on aviation frequencies.
You have been intercepted. If you hear this transmission, acknowledge the radio call and rock your wings.
He wants us to identify ourselves. We're a rogue aircraft, remember, for this demonstration, so we're not going to respond at all and see what this
You
fighter jet
are ordered to turn to the northwest.
The fighter jet giving us one last warning. After all of this, the pilot still won't listen. The plane won't leave the airspace. Will you shoot them down?
If required, we'll execute the rules of engagement per the commander of the North American Aerospace Defense Command. And yes, we would do that.
Shoot the plane down.
If it meets the rules of engagement, yes, we would, to defend the airspace.
Why are they policing the parameters of Antarctica in such a vigilant way? Surely they are just protecting the penguins and seals that we've seen so often in Planet Earth and Frozen Planet documentaries. I don't know, I'm not too sure anymore, because after I stumbled across this. giant ice wall, stretching for what seems to be hundreds and hundreds of miles. I don't know about you, but I find this footage deeply disturbing. With NASA's lives in mind and that great ice wall looming in the distance, I began to experience what some call cognitive dissonance. I went into denial. Of course none of this could be true, and of course our Earth is a spinning globe as we've been taught throughout our lives. It's one thing NASA lying, but are all the professors and scientists lying too? Is the National Geographic Channel lying? And what about Newton, Einstein, Hawking and Attenborough? Are they lying too? It's military. A plethora of books have been written on the subject. Interestingly, soon after the crash in 1947, the Central Intelligence Agency, the Department of Defense and the National Security Agency were all established. Just as the space race between America and Russia began in 1956, Admiral Byrd returned to Antarctica under Operation Deep Freeze to once again attempt to establish US Antarctic bases. It marked the beginning of a permanent military presence in Antarctica. Speaking about Antarctica, Byrd said,
Admiral Byrd, you've been to both the North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this Earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
That's a tremendous
So there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world.
Admiral Byrd died in his sleep of a heart ailment a year later in 1957. He was an active Freemason. A year later, in 1958, NASA was established. And then soon after, in 1959, the Antarctica Treaty was signed by the UN, prohibiting access and ownership. I do not dispute that the Nazis created advanced technological flying crafts, and I do not dispute that many of them could have potentially fled to deep Antarctic bases. What many are not taught in history lessons at school is that many Nazis actually fled to America after the war. Remember, carefully choreographed by the Illuminati elite. They are illusions cast upon the people using a system of us versus them, when in reality the us is funding the them, and vice versa. Werner von Braun was a German-born aerospace engineer and so-called space architect, and worked on Nazi Germany's rocket development program. In 1960, him and others were hired by NASA, where he served as director of the newly formed Marshall Space Flight Center. He was also chief architect of the technology that supposedly landed the Apollo spacecraft on the moon. What many haven't realized is that the Roswell crash and UFO narrative of 1947 was a carefully wrought and insidious form of that can be classified as a PSYOP. A PSYOP is a psychological operation designed specifically to convey selected information and indicators to audiences to influence their emotions, motive, and objective reasoning.
Beyond low Earth orbit. Beyond low Earth orbit.
The kinds of technologies that we're testing out on Space Station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit. So we have a really robust exploration program at NASA.
The plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and that will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually. The moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to. The moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to
The moon. The moon. The moon.
Wait, what? Come again? I thought we went to the moon. It seems like someone is lying. And now that you know about these radiation belts, do you really believe we went to this imaginary ball of rock in this tin can? We never went to the moon, and no one can go to the moon as it is not a sphere. Van Allen was approached by the military in the early 60s. In 1962, he suggested clearing the belts away by setting off nuclear bombs near the outer belt. The US military contacted Van Allen and began conducting a series of nuclear tests in the early 1960s called Operation Dominic. As the official narrative tells us, the operation included within it the Operation Fishbowl events, which were designed to understand how nuclear weapons would interact with the Earth's so-called magnetic field. The highest of the Fishbowl events was called Starfish Prime, a 1.4 megaton nuclear bomb detonated at 400 kilometers on July 9th, 1962. Why were they firing rockets and nuclear bombs way up into the Earth's atmosphere to discover more about its radiation? You do realize that nuclear bombs produce extreme radiation. You do not discover the chemical composition of lemon juice by squeezing more lemon juice onto it. And this is the secret. No one in history has ever left Earth. You cannot leave Earth. They are telling you to your face.
Now, one thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system.
The Earth is a closed system.
We cannot leave the Earth. There's no place to go.
And this is from one of the highest scientist Kabbalah priest himself, straight from the goat's mouth. See, these just have to tell you, they are hiding it in plain sight again. And they're getting away with it because they are relying on both our inability to get our heads around the bamboozlement of impossible figures and phenomena, and they are also relying on our blind trust in the scientific institutions of the world and their word. No one has ever left flat Earth. It is a closed system, and not because there are radiation belts. No one has left because there is a dome-like roof above of what is better understood as a firmament. We cannot leave the Earth. This is what Admiral Byrd discovered in Antarctica. They discovered the foundations of the firmament. And that's why you cannot go to Antarctica. It is literally the edge of the Earth. And I know what you're probably thinking. What? This is going from crazy to crazier to insane. But by now you already know what I am going to say. Let me show you. In 2014, civilian space geeks constructed their own rocket with a camera on and sent it up with the goal of being the first civilian rocket to make it to space. Look what happens.
Our mission as the Civilian Space Exploration Team is to be the first civilian team in history to launch a rocket that reaches space.
All systems are go for launch.
T-minus 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
that rocket hit. If there was a high amount of intense radiation up there, it would have scorched that mini rocket to pieces. There is no radiation above us covering a globular spinning planet ball. It is a flat, stationary plane with a firmament above. And I know that you want to scream and say that does not prove anything. The rocket's engine could have failed. But take it easy. We are just getting started. You see, what they never told you in school is that every single civilization in our Earth's history knew that the Earth is flat, and there existed a firmament above our heads. They were trying to tell us, and illustrations throughout the years have brought their conceptions of the world that we live in to life. Look. Only one is of the earth, and I saw the four winds which support the earth and the sky, and I saw the winds which turn the sky and cause the disk of the sun and all the stars to set. And I saw the winds of the earth which support the clouds, and I saw the paths of the angels. I saw at the end of the earth the firmament of heaven above. The Quran references it. With power and skill did we construct the firmament. The book of Job, which is older than the Torah itself, references this very firmament. Hast thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong as a molten looking glass? What does that mean? A molten looking glass.
I guess I'm up against the highest, hardest stained glass ceiling. So I guess I'm up against the highest, hardest stained glass ceiling.
And it may be hard to see tonight, but we are all standing under a glass ceiling right now.
It was fine for all this talk about me running to break the big, hard glass ceiling.
Although we weren't able to shatter that highest, hardest glass ceiling this time, thanks to you, it's got about 18 million cracks in it. And the light is shining through like never before.
There's a mystery. Scattered around in the sand are thousands of chunks of strange yellow-green glass.
It is really, really a mysterious glass. We scientists are still kind of puzzled how these things form.
And I can't believe we just put the biggest crack in that glass ceiling yet. It's got about 18 million cracks in it.
Again, they are telling us. And the crowd claps and cheers in their own ignorance. They are telling us while laughing behind our backs. But wait a minute. The firmament cannot be made of super strong glass, or that rocket would have been shattered upon impact. And I know, maybe the rocket just malfunctioned or ran out of power. Stay with me. Interestingly, the biblical book of Genesis holds some clues to this mystery. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so." Could there really be water just above the firmament and directly below it? It sounds like an absurd concept. Not as absurd as bending oceans wrapped around a spinning space ball, mind you. There is no space, no Kabbalah Ein Sof vacuum of nothingness. Space is an elaborate hoax. Real space is water. And the water below the firmament appears to be some kind of gooey substance that is paradoxically soft and yet impenetrable. They cannot get through it. And it seems that one scientist found a similar kind of substance within the dark depths of the ocean.
One of the strangest places on the ocean's floor was only just discovered in the 1990s. I might agree it's one of a handful of people to ever see it in person.
Without a doubt, one of the most amazing things that I have ever seen in the bottom of the ocean. It was while filming for Blue Planet. It was in the Gulf of Mexico. I noticed there's something out in the distance. Couldn't tell exactly what, but it looked like a dark band. And as we approached it, the dark band became a donut. I saw this donut. It was black in the center. What the heck is that? And so as we get closer and closer to it, I noticed that the black band had what appeared to be kind of steam over it. And then I looked, and there was water lapping against the shoreline. This band was a ring of mussels. And inside the ring of mussels was a lake. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm already underwater. We went out over the water in this lake and tried to descend it and bounced off. It was so super saline and dense that the submarine couldn't go down it. We literally bounced off, and as we bounced off, we sent ripples heading back to the shoreline. It was insane. I've never...
NASA tells us that our globe is spinning at 1,000 miles per hour on its axis and 67,000 miles per hour around the sun, which is then travelling at 570,000 miles per hour within our galaxy. If this was truly the case, then we would not see the same constellations in the same places in the night sky. The night sky would be completely random and perpetually changing. But it isn't. As we've seen, the stars above us, attached somehow to a great, immense and mysterious firmament, travel in circular motions around our flat, stationary Earth, with Polaris, or what we call the Northern Star, a fixed unmoving point in the centre and above the centre of our Earth at the North Pole. Progress, control and manipulation, both necessary as we advance technologically, because technology exposes their lies. Advanced cameras expose the lies of space. That is why the key methods for discerning truth from lies is to trust our own eyes, senses, and judgment over narrative. There is zero evidence of the heliocentric model on Earth. And to follow the people who run our world, follow the money, follow the bloodlines, follow the symbolism, and follow their fear. When they suppress, when they scream hoax, when they smear, we must dig and examine. The question burns. Who or what cut down our giant trees and mined the earth? And where did all the mined material go? There are a handful of possible conclusions we can draw from studying the geological nature of our flat Earth. The first is that whatever beings mined Earth were undeniably more advanced, technologically, industrially, and intelligently than the human species. In the bowl with the magnet. Water is diamagnetic. It would certainly resist a large magnetic mountain. Is the North Pole really Earth's very own rabbit hole? And again, if this were true, why lie? It's entirely possible to let people know about this mountain and whirlpool and make it compatible with their heliocentric model. The rabbit hole goes a lot deeper than you realize. It's hard to imagine a bigger secret than flat Earth itself, the firmament, the giant trees and quarried land. But there is one. It could very well perhaps be the most satanic lie of them all, just perhaps. As always, the clues are hiding in plain sight, in the symbolism, in the mythology, the language, the metaphors, the movies, waiting patiently to be discovered. If we were to take them at their word and believe that Mercator and other renowned cartographers of the time were just influenced by a now missing book, the journey would end here. But by now, we know better than that. History is a corruption. The truth has been shattered, fragmented, mythologized, and scattered. All cultures throughout time have spoken of an ancient and sacred land. The ancient Greeks called this place Hyperborea, a land of perpetual sun. They said the people of Hyperborea were giants that lived for 1,000 years and enjoyed a life of happiness. Look at that word. Hyper is a prefix meaning beyond, and Boreas was the god of the north wind. Hyperborea, beyond the north wind. It is reminiscent of another word, the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights. The Hindu and Buddhist traditions speak of this legendary land as Shambhala. In Buddhist mythology, Mount Meru has its roots in hell and its summit in heaven, and is the bridge between Earth's realms. Scholars have pondered the location of Shambhala, writing that the literature frequently asserts that the world axis is associated with the center of Shambhala, and therefore it cannot possibly coincide with the Earth's spin axis unless Shambhala lies at the North Pole. Numerous sources support the tradition that Shambhala once lay near the North Pole. The Scythians, a branch of the Vedic peoples who roamed the Central Asian steppe, told of a wonderful place, similar to Shambhala, that lay far to the north. In most Asian cosmology, Mount Meru stands at the center. Look at the cosmological geometry here. Mount Meru at the center with 4 surrounding continent lands. In the fountain source of occultism, Paraka writes, this spot is the summit of what in the Hindu Puranas is called Shvetadvipa, Mount Meru, or Sumeru. It is the North Pole of the Earth. It is the mystical North Pole. The Japanese spoke of the island of the congealed drop, which was placed at the North Pole. The Vedics called this land Paradisha. Rene Guénon in The King of the World writes, According to the Vedas text and the Persian Avesta, Paradisha was literally located in the sense of the word at the pole. The ancient Hebrew word for Paradisha is Pardes, which translates to garden. In Norse mythology, we have Vergelmir, the whirlpool at the roots of the cosmic tree Yggdrasil, where we are told all rivers flow from. The ash is greatest of all trees and best. Its limbs spread out over all the world and stand above heaven. 3 roots of the tree uphold it and stand exceeding broad. One is among the Aesir, another among the Rhyme giants, in that place where aforetime was the yawning void. The third stands over Niflheim, and under that root is Vergelmir. You've seen this before. Look closer. A circular rim of mountains. Perhaps at first mistaken for the Antarctic ice ring. But compared to Mercator's 4 continents surrounding Rupes Nigra, a circular rim of mountains. In the Bible, this land is called the Garden of Eden. In the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. A river watering the garden flowed from Eden. From there it was separated into 4 headwaters. The same 4 headwaters that Mercator depicts in his map. Beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth, is Mount Zion, on the sides of the north, the city of the great king. It has many names: Mount Zion, Mount Meru, Sumeru, Rupes Nigra, the Axis Mundi, the cosmic axis, the world pillar, the world tree, the tree of life. The connection at the center of this plane, connecting the above and the below. The source of God, the source of magnetism. The Book of Enoch is also consistent. And from there, I went to the middle of the earth and saw a blessed, well-watered place, which had branches which remained alive and sprouted from a tree which had been cut down. And there I saw a holy mountain, and under the mountain, to the east of it, there was water, and it flowed towards the south. All cultures have their own versions of this central axis, Mount Meru, or what the Bible refers to as the Tree of Life. Heaven's altar right here on earth. William D. Warren in Paradise Found states, "Is anywhere in the temple of nature there was to be an altar. It could only be here. That it was here finds a fresh and unexpected confirmation in the singular agreement of many ancient religions and mythologies in associating their paradise tree with the axis of the world, or otherwise with equal unmistakableness locating it at the Arctic pole of the Earth. The North Pole is truly the land of 1,000 names. In accounts of his voyage in search of the Garden of Eden, Irish Saint Brendan, also known as the Navigator, journeyed to the north past Iceland and Greenland and recounts seeing great crystal pillars. A lot of Celtic mythology centers around the northern regions, with many believing that the real location of the Arthurian Avalon is actually at the center, the North Pole. Interestingly, the same John Dee that wrote to Mercator claimed that King Arthur conquered the far northern region. According to John Dee, another missing text, the Gestae Arthuri, apparently contained an account of Arthur's expedition to the North Pole. Another text, the Legis Anglorum Londonis Collectae, testifies to this same expedition. Through Celtic mythology, King Arthur became associated with the North constellation, the Great Bear, otherwise known as Ursa Major. By Sir Walter Scott's day, King Arthur had become firmly associated with the Pole Star, or Polaris. In his 1805 work, Lay of the Last Minstrel, he states, Arthur's slow wane his course doth roll, in utter darkness round the pole. The northern bear lowers black and grim, Orion's studded belt is dim. The symbolism speaks louder than the corrupted history. King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table and the Western and Chinese zodiacs are strikingly similar. The Chinese zodiac table. It is our flat Earth. The constellations of the dome or firmament circling the magnetic center, as do the yin-yang of the sun and the moon. King Arthur and the 12 knights at the Round Table. 12 zodiac signs, 12 knights, with King Arthur's seat at the top, like Polaris. Look at the rose in the center. It is very similar to Mercator's representation of the North Pole. The 4 continents look like petals, and the magnetic mountain in the center looks like the plant's stigma. Is the North Pole the true Holy Grail? The clock, with its 12 hours, all time revolving around the center or the pole. There are 12 months in a year and 4 seasons, just like the 4 continents surrounding the pole. Our Earth is the oldest clock. 12 stars on the flag of Europe. Mercator's letter stated that Mount Meru, or Rupes Nigra, was 33 miles in circumference. 33 again. The United Nations flag, split into 33 sections, with the final, largest section falling in the center. 33rd degree Freemasonry. During the course of initiation, the Mason is taught that the North is Masonically a place of darkness. The Freemasons worship East, West, and South, and forsake the North. This is because the North is associated with the energy of good. It is the source, the magnetic mountain, the axis mundi directly underneath Polaris, the fixed constant star. 33 is also the age Jesus was when crucified. Many scholars have drawn links between Jesus and King Arthur. Jesus had 12 disciples. Da Vinci's The Last Supper. 12 disciples revolve around the center, Christ. A closer look at the table shows an arched central base, suggesting it was actually a round table that has been halved and flattened for purposes of the painting, hidden in plain sight. Our first encounter with the North Pole is also one of the first deceptions we ever experience as humans. Saint Nicholas, or Santa, comes from the North Pole. Santa is an anagram of Satan and has ties to another mythological being, Krampus, a horned half-goat, half-demon deity that punishes children who misbehave, i.e., it has its roots in the practice of Moloch worship. Krampus is still worshipped today in many European countries. Can you see what they are doing? Contemporary Christmas practices have their roots in Victorian literature. Before that, the season still carried its true Christian practices and celebration of Christ. The cabal has distorted and corrupted the true celebration of Christmas, tying satanic figures suggestive of to the North Pole. As we grow up and find out Santa is a lie, we never give the North Pole another thought. It is the location of our first disillusion, our first painful truth. We are programmed to deliberately lose our sense of wonder for the North Pole. This usually coincides with the same time that we begin our heliocentric indoctrination at school. Christmas is a celebration of the birth of Christ, a celebration of the source, of God. That's why we put up Christmas trees. The Christmas tree is Mount Meru, the Rupes Nigra, the tree of life, and the star on top is Polaris, the fixed star in the firmament. Humanity has collectively forgotten this. The Christmas tree is a celebration of the magnetic axis mundi at the center of our flat Earth, and it has subsequently been corrupted and replaced by debased materialism. We no longer remember what we are celebrating. Cabal must corrupt the North Pole. They tell us it's just an ice sheet, but Google Earth cannot even give us a photoshopped version of the ice. They don't even want people interested in ice sheets. They can't even bear to acknowledge the North Pole. It is against their satanic religion. Wizard of Oz. Dorothy's journey through the land of Oz. Notice the red shoes. Do you remember what Macaulay Culkin said about the red shoes? Dorothy and her unlikely band of friends must follow the yellow brick road to the Emerald City to ask the wizard if she can be sent home. The author, Lyman Frank Baum, developed maps for his land of Oz. Does this remind you of something? 4 lands or continents surrounding the central Emerald City, just like the North Pole in Mercator's map. Look at the representation of the Emerald City in the film. Look at the domed halo surrounding the city. Much like the halo we see with representations of Christ. But does it remind you of something? Look closer. Columns. Basalt columns. The magnetic tree of life at the center, also cut down in our history. The Emerald City. What else emits an emerald green glow? The Aurora Borealis. The Northern Lights. Look at the yellow brick road in the film. A swirl to the center, a whirlpool of sorts. Somewhere over the rainbow again. The Bifrost Bridge from Norse mythology. A path between heaven and earth, between Midgard and Asgard. Bifrost means the swaying road to heaven. In Islam, it is called Al-Sirah, the narrow bridge people must pass in order to enter paradise. Look at the ancient Siam city in Thailand. This is supposed to be a recreation of Sumeru Mountain. Look at the bridge you have to cross on your journey. And what about the whirlpool at the center? Mercator described it as a filter funnel. Norse mythology labels it as Vergelmir, or the world's well. Could there really be a whirlpool opening in the center of Earth, caused by the magnetic tree of life, in which the oceans flow down into? Paul the Deacon, an 8th century Benedictine monk, wrote that Where the ocean extends without bounds is that very deep abyss of waters which we commonly call the ocean's navel. It is said twice a day to suck the waves into itself and to spew them out again. By the whirlpool of which we have spoken, it is asserted that ships are often drawn in with such rapidity. Gerald of Wales, royal clerk to King Henry II, wrote, "Not far from the islands towards the north, there is an astonishing whirlpool in the sea, towards which there is a set current of the waves from all quarters, until, pouring themselves into nature's secret recesses, they are swallowed up as if it were in the abyss." In the Historia Norwegiae, an anonymous 12th century Norwegian monk describes the exact same phenomenon. The greatest of all whirlpools is to be found there, which engulfs the strongest ships. There is a very deep abyss in the earth itself, and alongside it are open-mouthed caverns containing winds. These winds draw to them the waters of the sea through hidden passages in the earth. They shut them up in the vaults of the abyss. The powerful source of magnetism offers some suggestion as to how this central vortex on Earth actually works. Not only is water diamagnetic and will resist gaining proximity to a magnetic mountain, creating an opening, but also a powerful magnetic source and a powerful central axis mundi would generate a strong electromagnetic field or electromagnetic stream. This takes the form of a toroidal electromagnetic field. Even in their heliocentric lie, they acknowledge that the Earth's magnetic field is toroidal, or shaped like a torus. The name Mercator or Mercator produces the 7-letter anagram creator or creator, tor, toroidal or torus. The source of the toroidal magnetic field lies at the center, or the bull's eye, the bull, the torus. Do you see how they have corrupted the torus by making it synonymous with the horned animal? The toroidal electromagnetic field is a stream of all vibration, frequency, and energy on our flat plane. A constant dance of the above and the below, with our earthly plane in the center. The toroidal field draws the oceans in at the central axis mundi vortex. As the water is drawn into the center of the earth, it keeps going and is most likely drawn out again at the perimeters of Antarctica. Hence, that is why there is so much ice. It freezes because there is not much sunlight at the outer perimeters of flat Earth. The ice has always melted at a constant rate, and this has been used recently to fuel the hoax by the cabal. This central vortex at the North Pole would also suggest the possible existence of the biblical Great Deep, and offer some clues to the existence of water above the firmament, all of which are outside of our perception's grasp and have been hidden from us. As absurd as this constant recycling of water sounds, the same process is happening right now inside of your body and never stops. Blood is pumped from the body into the right atrium and then is drawn up into the more central right valve to the lungs, which oxygenates the blood and pumps it into the left atrium at the heart's periphery, which is then drawn up into the central left valve back into the body. Speaking of the stars in the firmament, Enoch said that we shall err and take them to be gods. All planets in the fake solar system are named after false gods, such as Mars, Saturn, and Mercury. All of them apart from Earth. Earth is an interesting word, one of its kind. It is an anagram of heart. Look at the electromagnetic field of the human heart. It is a toroid. Look at the apple. It is the same shape as the toroid. What fruit did Satan tempt Eve with in the garden, the center of the earth? Hidden in plain sight, as above, so below, the microcosm and the macrocosm. What lies inside of Earth at this central vortex? Who knows? But it could explain the phenomena of the auroras at the poles. Perhaps the mysterious green light is atmospheric light coming from inner Earth, or the light emitted at the junction between realms. The word aurora borealis is very similar to the word Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail. A satanic symbol we see used over and over again. Many have speculated that the Ouroboros symbolizes the ice ring at Antarctica. Oro comes from the ancient Greek meaning for tail, and Boros comes from the ancient Greek meaning for swallow. Boros is also very similar linguistically to Boreas, god of the north wind. The Ouroboros is also present in the Norse cosmology, circling the center. The Bible referred to it as Leviathan, a creature with no mate, its tail placed inside of its mouth. It signifies how the North Pole and the Antarctic ice ring meet in the continual, infinite recycling of the oceans caused by the flow of energy from a toroidal electromagnetic field. It also symbolizes the continual dance between good and evil, the good being the Arctic North Pole and the evil being Antarctica. The ant prefix of Antarctica is precisely the same prefix used to signify opposition and being against. The Arctic is Christ, and Antarctica is the Antichrist. So many of the elite are obsessed with Antarctica. In the mythologies, it is only the pure of heart that can enter the North Pole Center, Hyperborea, the Emerald City, the Garden of Eden. And we see this motif play out over and over again in the mocking of our ignorance, while they continually lead us further and further away from knowing the truth, keeping us rooted to giving our energy to their matrix. The recent BFG movie shows the characters jumping into another realm at a center with a giant tree. Notice the aurora. Stephen King's The Dark Tower series places the magnetic Mount Meru, the Rupes Nigra, in the center. Notice the familiar map and the Arthur Rose. Look at a clip from the film.
It's a map. My father showed me a map like this once. Inside the circle is your world and my world. Many others. No one knows how many. The Dark Tower stands at the center of all things. And it stood there from the beginning of time. And it sends out powerful energy.
Interestingly, Stephen King also wrote another novel about life under the dome. Philip Pullman wrote a children's novel called The Northern Lights, in which the protagonist enters another realm through the aurora. Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth sees its protagonists enter inner Earth in the north, just beyond Iceland. We have the Wandering Mountain in the never-ending story. Notice the rainbow. Even the production company Paramount references this in its logo. Notice the dome stars above the Paramount, the Mount Meru, Mount Zion. We see reference to Flat Earth and the Tree of Life, Mount Meru, hidden in plain sight everywhere. George Bush International Airport, the Flat Earth map on the ground with a huge Tree of Life in the center, reaching up to the dome above. Darling Gardens in Sydney, Australia. The Flat Earth map again, with the Antarctic ice ring and the magnetic mountain in the center. Even the Central United Nations meeting room displays this imagery. Notice the starred dome above and the grand gold pillar in the center. What about flights? Wouldn't pilots have noticed if there were a huge vortex at the center of the Earth? Well, perhaps, if they actually flew over the region. Flights are restricted, we are told, because it is too cold
to fly over the Arctic and Antarctic regions. They tell us they have the technology to send people out into cold space, but not to cross the polar zones. In fact, a closer look at flight paths more generally exposes their heliocentric lie. On a globe Earth, South Africa to Australia should be a straight path over the Indian Ocean. They could even refuel at Madagascar if necessary. But no such flight exists. They all stop off at Dubai, Hong Kong, or Malaysia. A huge detour that makes no sense on a globe, but makes complete sense when looking at a flat Earth map. It's the direct flight path on flat Earth. We are running out of time. It is important to acknowledge the remaining and resistant beauty of our world despite the vast amount of barbaric quarrying. It is undeniable that our flat Earth quarry retains aspects of beauty, sometimes so powerful it is described by humans as breathtaking. Although we are a species born out of the barbaric behavior of those who destroyed the Earth, Carbon-12 is not the entirety of our biological design. Like the land, we retain elements of the good, which can be traced back to divine creation, or what is called God. Whether you view God as a being, vibration and magnetism itself, or something else does not matter. God is the source, the intelligence that designs and creates. Hexagonal efficiency is just one geometric design found in living organic matter. There is a sequence and ratio underpinning all geometric shapes, life, and matter itself. These are the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio. The Fibonacci sequence, the mathematical sequence of adding the last two numbers that came before, starting with 1. As the sequence continues, a constant ratio of 1 to 1.6 appears. This is called the golden ratio and continues indefinitely. To imagine what a 1 to 1.6 ratio looks like, compare it to a 1 to 1 ratio. Any rectangle with any two of the numbers of this Fibonacci sequence forms what is known as the golden rectangle, a perfect rectangle. This rectangle can be broken down into squares the size of the next Fibonacci numbers. Similarly, if you construct the rectangle with the 1 to 1.6 ratio and begin to make incremental golden ratio points within that, you end up with the same results as the Fibonacci sequence. If you divide each with an arc, then the pattern begins to take shape. We see Fibonacci's spiral, the spiral in and of itself. A spiral spiraling out at the sequential ratio of 1 to 1.6. Fibonacci's spiral is literally found everywhere in the natural world, on both a microcosmic level and a macrocosmic level. It is the blueprint of all creation. It is not a coincidence that the entire education system pretty much ignores the golden ratio and golden spiral. We are not taught about this because the inevitable conclusion of understanding the omnipotence of this ratio is to acknowledge intelligent design and creation. It is the fingerprint of God. When viewed from above, the toroid takes on the shape of a spiral. Your brainwashing and programming has to have such a powerful grip over you if you think for 1 second our flat Earth itself would not take on the same ratio and patterning. A golden spiral concentrating into a central vortex at the North Pole. Do you see how they have taken the fingerprint of God, the spiral, and corrupted it? How to continue after discovering such evil exists, and the deceptions cast upon humanity? What to do when things fall apart, when down becomes up and up is now down, when those you trusted the most deceived you and let you down, when the storm comes. Center yourself. Return to the center. And not in the way they tell you. There is a reason the cabal pushes things like meditation and want you to participate in blind positivity. There is a reason that most organizations now subscribe to this narrative and ask you to attend to your well-being. They want you to accept that reality is stressful and full of corruption, to normalize it, and tell you the antidote is forced relaxation, to switch off and ignore, and forced positivity, which in reality is just to ignore the matter at hand and replace it with delusional positive thoughts. In other words, to turn a blind eye. The eye is a microcosm of flat Earth itself, with the pupil at the center, giving you sight. Center yourself, but not through their methods. There is only one way to achieve centrality and stillness. The eye of the storm, immutable and still, while all around it energetic rage. The tree trunk, steadfast as the wind rattles its branches. The truth is objective. It cannot move, cannot bend, cannot fall apart. It is positively charged. It stands up to any counter argument. And because of this, the truth is pure and is fixed. the fixed center of being. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist. And knowing the world we live in, the journey to the center is going to be the journey of a lifetime. It's here. The end of the rabbit hole. The end of our small journey. There is so much we did not get to cover, but I hope you will not forget over time and keep on searching. Did I accomplish what I set out to achieve? Am I wiser? Do I know more? Perhaps a little, but the more truth I discovered, the less I truly know. The truth humbles and puts me in my place, but it is not a place of dislocation that believing in the Ironsoft heliocentric model of nothingness produces in an individual. You probably want to ask if I now believe in God. If you need to ask that question, then you haven't been paying attention. I didn't tell you before because I knew I wouldn't need to. But this isn't really an ending for me or for yourself. For I know that something in you, viewer, has forever changed. Whether it's your entire perspective of the earth, or just a small fraction of something that may nag at you during the late nights when sleep doesn't come. This isn't goodbye, and this is not an exit. It's actually the beginning. You're not really leaving the rabbit hole. You cannot leave the rabbit hole now. You've seen too much. The road doesn't end here. It's just a brief pause at the crossroads of another entrance to another rabbit hole. The journey of a lifetime. And who knows where it will lead you, viewer. But let's hope it's closer to the center.